blow to you and to all of us who understand the importance of that man's work. Thank you for that piece. It was extraordinary and very courageous, I must say. You mentioned something, the divine feminine. You actually asked the question, how did we get here? When you were talking about, presumably, the rape of Gaia, and how did we get to manifest a paradigm so mutant and so out of alignment with what any of us would regard as being divine resonance or spiritual resonance. I think that was a very important sentence that you gave out to us. Now, we, all of us in this room, have to be painfully aware of the fact that the world, the entire world's economy, the backbone that carries the infrastructure, the socio-economic infrastructure of the world, is carried by something we call money, economy. It's ambiguous at best. It is utterly toxic at worst. It is, in turn, predicated on the rape of Gaia, the extraction of mineral resources, fossil fuels from the belly of the sacred feminine. This is our mother, our planet. And those resources are raped from her, desecrated, taken to the surface, combusted, exploded into false fire. And that Luciferian principle of the false fire combustion is then harnessed and sold to us, ladies and gentlemen, sold to us as utilities. And we are forced into a mutant paradigm which demands that we wake up in the morning, we march to work, we say goodbye to those that we love. We're torn away from them for 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day. If you're a miner in Mozambique, it's going to be 18 hours a day. And we work, we work, we work. And we're very lucky if we get to make love to our wife and actually look into her eyes, or husband, before we collapse exhausted. There is something very wrong with this picture. It is predicated on the rape of Gaia, on the desecration of the sacred feminine. And to that end, I salute you for raising that point. David, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
I think that you're very valid. I have been trained over the last 2 years. My partner, who has inspired me, taken me down many roads, and I've understood the historical context of the feminine. You can look back at the Sophia, the power of the Sophia and the deluge and the fall of man. And we clearly, over the last eons of time, for thousands and thousands of years, we've lost the feminine aspect. And you have to read that and understand the context in which I'm placing that. But I operate myself always on the basis of what Walter Russell talks to. I've been very blessed to be introduced to that by my great friend Alan Lee Atkins, and we talk about Walter Russell, and we talk about the rhythmic interchange and the feminine and the masculine, the positive and the negative. And these are very important aspects to look at today. We can't work without each other, and yet there is a elastic band, very much parallel to what you're mentioning here, that we have reached the end of. We're at a point here where we are going to be thrust back into, call it a source or whatever type of vernacular you wish to use, but we are going to be thrust back to nature, to Mother Gaia. And this is why earlier I was mentioning to Sasha that I truly believe that, yes, we have some challenges. I think those challenges are very simplified for us as a society, and that is us getting off the grid. And I would concur with that. It is the only way. My work, I'm a sort of hybrid. I have a program called Crossing Over the Bridge, so I will talk to anybody and everybody, the establishment, the conscious communities, anybody. Because I truly believe that at the end of the day, we're all totally inseparable, and therefore, at the end of the day, we'll all be on the same ship together.
Jerome, are you with us? How are we bringing Dan Winter in? Is he behind us? Dan!
I'm here.
just some audio.
Can you hear me now?
Hi Dan, this is Sasha. Can you hear me?
Yes, hear you well. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed. Delightful to see you, albeit very difficult from us, because you look like God with a white beard above us. Dan, we are a group of humble souls in this auditorium, and we seek only to learn of the fountain of youth, the Holy Grail, and Solomon's key. Can you help us, please, sir? Can you give us God in an equation?
Well, I did have a few thoughts here. Actually, I'm joined here by Bill Donovan, many of you know. And what I was thinking about would be perhaps most instructive, I hope, is this notion that, as Dr. George Edgley in Budapest recently proved, that his hydrogen-catalyzed carbon powder fusion reaction, which seems to have at least somewhere around 2 to 4 times as much energy out as in. But when you're in the presence of that kind of fusion, which is parallel to the reversible carbon-boron fusion in the PAP engine that Tesla discovered from his carbon button work that Bill knows so much about here. Anyway, in the presence of that fusion reaction, every single time, Edgley is reporting quite clearly that everyone around was healed of a cold, of an infection. It was a tremendously bioactive field. So I'm just suggesting a little meditation here on why it is that the right kind of fusion is a bioactive field. The reason it's an energy source is the same reason that it's healing or bioactive. And if you can understand the wave symmetry of that, then you have, I think, Solomon's key and the Holy Grail and a few other details.
Thank you for that.
I agree.
Do you want to respond to that? You agree? Nice. Oh, you agree. Excellent.
Well,
I'm just going to first, did you finish there, Dan, or did you want to finish with the Holy Grail?
well, just a thought about, see, when Bill and I and friend Martin Jones wrote this paper called Mathematics of Fusion, fractalfield.com/mathematics of fusion, proving golden ratio is the solution to constructive wave compression interference and therefore implosion fusion. And at the end, Bill helped us place the Tom Bearden video in which he's explaining why a phase conjugate or longitudinal pump wave can pump the plasma of any nucleus. Any nucleus is functioning, in effect, as a plasma imploder. And, you know, the plasma universe physics people say 99.99% of the universe is plasma or charge, in my words. But I think they're wrong. I think it's really 100% of the universe. It's basically a bubble of charge. But if you can understand how the bubble becomes centripetal and therefore fusion and therefore a source of energy, which is to say cohere the vacuum, the symmetry, you can also understand why it's self-organizing and mindful and bioactive. Everyone knows that ball lightning responds to telepathy. I think we need the physics of why, and we're close. So anyway, that was my little intro. Go ahead.
Thank you for that, Dan. We have some eminent folks on the table here, and I'd like to first throw out any questions that they might have for you. Would you like to ask them anything?
Yeah.
One moment, please.
Dan, it's Maury here. Look down.
Maury?
See, Dan came to my very first presentation that I ever gave. I was a graduate student, and it was the very first time I was talking on ball lightning. And there was only 10 people in the room, and there's this one strange guy with a beard that nobody's ever seen before, and every time I put a picture of ball lightning up, he would be nodding his head. And it turned out it was Dan Winter, who came all the way down from Eden, New York, to attend, I was just a graduate student, to attend my talk. I don't even know how he caught wind of it. And when I was done talking, Dan said, "Oh, I have something for you." And I go, "What?" He says, "Come to my car." And he opened up the trunk of his car, and there was a crate of books, very unusual, rare books. And he said, "These are for you. I'm loaning these to you." And it was just an incredible an incredible collection of very esoteric literature and sacred geometry. And I credit Dan Winter for making me the kook that I am.
Every time we now look at how we're going to make plasma containment, make ball lightning, every time I think about that, I think about you.
It's the telepathy thing.
Dan Winter, it's Mitchell Rabin. Good to see you.
Oh, that's from New York. Hi, Mitchell. How's the radio show?
I'm doing well. Very well, thank you. Very well. We haven't seen each other since about 1992 or so, when we were at that Sacred Geometry and Architecture impromptu conference in upstate New York, remember?
Yes. Yes, I think we were both still pretending to be young at that point.
No, there's no pretending. I'd like to pick up on what began to be engaged here with Sasha and then David on the subject of Gaia, because at the end of the day, this is about our relationship to Earth herself and to ourselves. And so much of your work has been regarding water, and you've done some absolutely brilliant, beautiful, and creative work within it, which of course is the body of Gaia herself. Could you speak a little bit about what it is that you've been doing that you can illuminate our audience about?
Well, many of you have seen our website, theimploder.com, and we took my equation for the vortex that is the radii of hydrogen, the 10 golden spirals in a perfect 6-degree cone, which we call Schauberger's dream, and we combined that, creating centripetal force in a water vortex with pure centripetal magnetics. And thus, we call it restored centripetal forces, and in fact, we have dramatic results in agriculture, and it's pretty cool. And it's parallel to what is done with the phase conjugating or centripetal dielectric, why the Ark of the Covenant reduces radioactivity and that sort of thing, all under the category of restored centripetal forces. But on the subject of Gaia, I think the key here is the fact that we know that the gravity field of the Earth decays every time a big highway cuts a magnetic line, and therefore the phase conjugate pump wave that stabilizes Earth gravity bleeds. So in effect, the reason we lose atmosphere is because the dream spell is no longer fractal or centripetal. So the pure concept of the mother, the fractal, or the feminine, or Gaia is very simple. That wave mechanic which makes it centripetal is what holds it together, what physics calls the phase conjugate and origin of self-organization. So, the poetic really has to fit the pure physics principle to understand how to restore Gaia, which is simply how to make any plasma ball self-organizing, Gaia included. And it's as simple as understanding why it's so measurable that focused human attention causes electric fields to compress. If we understood that, we could understand how to hold Gaia together.
Thank you. Dan, we're going to come back to questions from the panel in a moment, but there's a lady in the audience who has a question for you.
No, not a question,
Sure.
it's a comment.
A comment. Forgive me, Dan, brace yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank you very much for your film on the internet about the connection between DNA and GMO food. It's the best there is out there. And it's been important in our work in Norway. And it made me, for the first time, realize that also men understand the spiritual nature of DNA. And that was wonderful. You're the first one I've heard said anything. But I have a challenge here for you. And that's about the nature of, when we talk about the feminine, the divine feminine. It seems you like to talk about it, you call it divine and the great mother and everything, but you don't seem to know the real qualities of what it is as a force. And I've heard Nassim talk about it, for example, and he says, oh, well, there is the curve. That's what you seem to know. But the fact is that vacuum itself is of the feminine. So while the masculine force creates form, this form comes from the womb of which is the vacuum. And I like for you, I think you can develop that even more. Thank you.
Did you get the question, Dan?
It wasn't a question.
Well, you're powerful, dear. Congratulations. No, I mean, we started with the idea that the very center of every DNA rung on the ladder was a hydrogen bond, and we wrote new equations to prove why that's fractal, the phase conjugate nature of Planck length times exponent Golden ratio predicting hydrogen radii and frequency, also why time is fractal, and why the two frequencies of photosynthesis obey the exact same equation, Planck time exponent Golden ratio. So it's all about the centripetal force at the center of DNA, and that's the very nature of soul, and as you point out, the very nature of the feminine. And I would honor you, dear, and